On the afternoon of Camilla's 79th birthday, the cameras were pointed at the wrong person. Every lens, every royal correspondent, every front page was trained on the Queen as she stepped out at Highgrove for a quiet family gathering on July the 17th. And while the country watched the woman of the hour, almost nobody noticed the 11-year-old standing slightly apart near the garden steps. Princess Charlotte had brought something with her, a small posy of pale blue flowers tied with a plain ribbon, held in both hands the way a child holds something they have been told matters. They were forget-me-nots, Diana's flower. And when Charlotte stepped forward and placed them, not on the birthday table, but at the base of the memorial roses her father keeps at Highgrove, the mood in that garden changed in a way that no one had planned for. Here is the story. This is not just a sweet moment from a family birthday. It is the clearest sign yet of who the next generation of this monarchy has quietly decided to become. For 9 years, the public has watched Prince George as the future king and treated his younger sister as the charming afterthought, the girl who waves well and behaves at weddings. That reading was a mistake. What happened at Highgrove suggests that the child everyone overlooked may be the one who ends up carrying the most difficult inheritance in the family. The memory of a grandmother she never met at a celebration for the woman whose name was once set against Diana's in the public imagination. The stakes here reach past one birthday. They touch how this family holds its own history. To understand why a posy of flowers could unsettle a room full of adults, we need to look at how a child becomes the quiet center of a family without anyone deciding it. Why the flowers Charlotte chose carry a meaning that goes back nearly 30 years, what royal watchers believe William has been doing to prepare his daughter for exactly this kind of moment, and how a single gesture reopened the oldest and most delicate question in the House of Windsor, the one about Diana, Camilla, and the space between them. What looked like a small act of manners was something far heavier. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana was born on May 2nd, 2015.
On this day, the 2nd of May, in the year 2015, we welcome with humble duty the second born of the Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
Her third name was not an accident. It was a decision made by a son who wanted his mother's name inside his daughter's from the first day of her life. That detail sat quietly in the record for years, mentioned and then forgotten, until moments like this one make it feel deliberate again. Charlotte has now grown up almost entirely in public, and yet she remains, by design, the least understood of the 3 Wales children. George carries the weight of succession. Prince Louis carries the comic relief that every royal outing seems to need. Charlotte carries something harder to name, and until recently the palace seemed content to let her stay in that soft focus. Highgrove itself matters to this story. It is Charles's private house, the garden he built by hand over 4 decades, and it holds a small memorial planting that the family has never made a public spectacle of. Forget-me-nots have a specific place in this family's grief. They were Diana's favourite flower. They were planted in the sunken garden at Kensington Palace for the memorial that marked what would have been her 60th year. They appeared quietly at Harry's wedding. To place forget-me-nots anywhere near a royal event is not a neutral act. Everyone old enough to remember 1997 understands the signal, even when a child does not fully understand it herself. It helps to understand how easily Charlotte has been underestimated. In the years since her first public appearances, the press coverage devoted to her has followed a narrow script: her outfits, her manners, the occasional viral clip of her managing her younger brother at a public event. Between 2015 and today, she has appeared at coronations, jubilees, and state funerals, and yet the commentary almost never moved past how well she behaved. She was the child who curtsied correctly, waved on cue, and disappeared again into the background of the frame. That is precisely the kind of figure this family has learned to look through. The polished, dutiful ones rarely get studied closely because nothing about them seems to demand it. And that is often exactly where the most is happening. What the public did not see was the private work behind that composure. Those who follow the family closely believe William has been unusually deliberate about how his children come to know their grandmother. He does not, by most accounts, turn Diana into a distant legend. He keeps her ordinary and present, her favourite songs, her sense of humour, the flowers she loved, folded into everyday life rather than reserved for anniversaries. Royal watchers have long noted that, of the three children, Charlotte is said to resemble Diana most, not in appearance alone, but in temperament, in the way she reads a room. If William has been quietly teaching his daughter that grief can be carried lightly and warmly rather than solemnly, then Highgrove was less a surprise than a first public glimpse of a lesson that had been years in the making. And then there is Camilla. For the better part of 2 decades, the British press told a single story about these two women, one in which Camilla stood on one side and Diana on the other, and the public was invited to choose. Camilla has spent years, patiently and largely without complaint, trying to move the monarchy past that story. Royal biographer Ingrid Seward has written that Camilla long ago made peace with the fact that she would always be measured against a memory. That is the delicate ground on which an 11-year-old set down a handful of blue flowers. The first thing royal watchers noticed was that the gesture did not appear to be staged. According to reporting in Hello magazine, the family's plans for the day had been kept deliberately small, a private lunch rather than a public appearance, which meant there were no official photographers positioned to capture a set piece. The images that reached the public came from a single, long lens beyond the garden wall. Whatever Charlotte did, she was not doing it for a camera she could see. That detail is what gave the moment its weight. It read as sincere because, as far as the child knew, no one important was watching. But the flowers were not the only thing people noticed. Sources close to the household told the Daily Mail that Charlotte had asked to bring them herself, and that the choice of forget-me-nots had come from the girl, not from an adult managing the day. While there is no way to confirm exactly what was said inside that house, the account that has circulated is consistent, that an 11-year-old connected her grandmother's name, which she carries, to her grandmother's flower, which she had somehow learned to recognize, and decided on her own that a birthday was a fitting day to honor both women at once. Not the calculation of a strategist. The instinct of a child who has been paying closer attention than anyone realized. The most striking part came last. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams observed that the true significance was not the flowers, but the timing, that Charlotte had chosen to honor Diana at Camilla's celebration, and had done so in a way that caused no offense, only feeling. A palace insider, quoted by OK, described Camilla's reaction as gracious and visibly moved, saying the Queen understood at once what the child was doing and did not flinch from it. If that account holds, then a girl the public had filed away as decorative had just done something no adult in that family has ever managed cleanly in public, to hold Diana and Camilla in the same frame without asking anyone to choose. To feel why this landed the way it did, picture the two people standing closest to it. On one side, a woman turning 79, who has spent most of her adult life being told she is the reason a beloved princess was unhappy, and who has answered that accusation not with defense, but with decades of quiet duty. On the other, a child of 11 who never met Diana, who knows her only through a name, a few photographs, and the careful way the adults around her lower their voices when they speak of her. Between them, a handful of flowers. There is real tenderness in what Camilla has carried, and it deserves to be named before anything else is said. She did not have to welcome a gesture that pointed, however gently, at the very comparison she has spent years trying to lay to rest. She could have looked past it. Instead, by every account that has reached the press, she met the child where the child was. Sources say William, watching from a few feet away, understood immediately what his daughter had done and let it stand rather than smoothing it over. He did not step in to redirect the moment toward Camilla. He let Diana's name sit in the garden, on his mother's flower, in his daughter's hands, on the birthday of the woman who came after. That is the quiet drama of it. Not a confrontation, but a resolution nobody scripted. The person who finally stood in the impossible space between Diana and Camilla and made it look almost simple was the one the family had spent 11 years teaching everyone to overlook. What Highgrove revealed is that the emotional center of this monarchy may be shifting to a place no one was watching. Charlotte is still a schoolgirl, years away from any formal role, and it would be unfair to load a single afternoon with more meaning than a child should have to carry. But the instinct she showed to honor two women at once, rather than choose between them, is precisely the instinct this family has struggled to model for a generation. It suggests that the reconciliation the adults could never quite complete in public may be finished one day by the children who inherited the wound without inheriting the grievance. A grandmother's name, a grandmother's flower, and a birthday that will now be remembered for something no one came to see.